The Blackening, written by Tomello, with illustrations by Finky, narrated by Tomello. Notice: this story has been put together based on the testimonies of multiple involved parties, most of whom are Frates. Frates give notoriously unreliable accounts, but I have done my best to piece together the most accurate retelling of this sequence of events as I can manage through the collection and comparison of various statements. The original vulgar language used by the individuals in this story has been replaced in this transcription with less offensive vernacular or removed completely for the benefit of the reader. Chapter 1. The Mission. Frabello T Johnson bounced along on his hopper up to the entrance of Big Fat Burgers. He dismounted his ride and just left it lying about on the ground outside because there were no cars around and because orange Frates can do whatever they want. Frabello stepped inside and called out for his friend.
Big Fat Frate!
No response came. The entire restaurant was silent. It wasn't strange that there were no customers, as it wasn't supposed to be open yet, but it was strange for Big Fat Frate to not be home. Especially strange considering he knew he and Frabello were supposed to be going on a mission today.
Fatto!
Still nothing. Frabello went around checking for Big Fat Frate, looking in the booths to see if he was still sleeping, looking in the bathrooms to see if he was on the toilet. He knew he wouldn't be in the play place because he couldn't fit in the play equipment. He checked the kitchen, and walking in he saw two stubby legs sticking up out of a deep fryer kicking about in the air. A voice came from within the deep fryer.
Help! I done fell in the freaking deep fryer!
Frabello grabbed one of the flailing legs and pulled with all the might he could muster. Though it was a tight squeeze, the fellow in the deep fryer was quite greased up and so slid out, revealing himself to be the Big Fat Frate.
What were you doing in the deep fryer, you silly goober?
Asked Frabello.
I saw there were still some chips, and as I was leaning over to get 'em out, I slipped. I've been in there all night. Well, it's good there wasn't still oil in there, or you would have drowned. There was still oil in there. After I fell in, I drank it all to make sure I wouldn't drown.
Fatto slapped his tummy and it jiggled about quite happily. Frabello asked,
Have you recruited any extra Frates for the mission?
But Fatto didn't answer. He was distracted thinking about food and so wandered over to a table to start shoveling hamburgers in his mouth.
Big Fat Frate?
Frabello appealed. Big Fat Frate just kept eating hamburgers. He was in a world of his own.
Big Fat Frate?
Frabello asked again, now poking Fatto in the tummy. All Fatto let out between mouthfuls was,
Friggin' cheeseburger! Big Fat Frate!
Frabello finally shouted and pushed Fatto, making him fall backwards, although it looked more like rolling. The Big Fat Frate made no attempt of getting up. He continued the conversation lying on his back like a tortoise that had been flipped upside down.
Oh, sorry, Frabello. I was eating cheeseburgers. What were you saying? Did you recruit extra Frates for the mission? Oh, yeah. I got some goobers. Come with me.
Big Fat Frate rolled out of the kitchen with Frabello walking behind. It was a very common sight to see Fatto rolling around to get from place to place. His tremendous weight meant that most of the common forms of transportation for Frates, like pogo sticks, tricycles, or mounted animals, would break if he used them, and his stumpy little legs meant walking was quite slow. But his spherical physique made rolling around like a ball quite efficient. They entered into the outside area before the play equipment. Big Fat Frate took out his iconic baseball bat and smacked away at the structure. Clonk, clonk, clonk.
Wake up, you goobers! The orange Frate is here!
Two Frates emerged. A blue Frate in his pajamas came out of the slippery dip with a
Yahoo!
After some rumbling from inside, and then Wonderful Pete the Yellow Wizard came floating down from the top of the construction on his flying broom.
Wonderful Pete!
Exclaimed Frabello.
I haven't seen you since my inauguration. What have you been up to?
Wonderful Pete stroked his beard wisely.
Oh, mostly staying up in my mountain harassing people on the internet. But every now and then I'll come out and fly around to terrorize people with my magic or throw wrenches at them.
Frabello proudly placed a hand on Wonderful Pete's shoulder.
You're a true credit to Frate kind, Wonderful Pete. Welton is blessed to have a wizard like you. Yeah,
said Wonderful Pete before lighting up his wizard pipe and smoking some drugs. Frabello then put his other hand on Wonderful Pete's other shoulder and started shaking him about because he found it amusing to watch his beard wave around. Wonderful Pete was unfazed about this. Said Frabello. After he had finished amusing himself in that way, Frabello turned to the blue Frate who came out of the slide.
What's this bozo's name? I don't have a name yet,
said the blue Frate.
I haven't done a cloud naming ceremony yet, 'cause I can't read and stuff. Yeah, okay then, said
Frabello. He then turned back to Wonderful Pete and started shaking him again. Wonderful Pete was still unfazed about it.
Anyway, the mission, said
Frabello, finally moving on from shaking Wonderful Pete.
I have found the whereabouts of a police station just beyond Welton's border.
Wonderful Pete and the blue Frate gasped.
I got Big Fat Frate to collect a bunch of paint and assemble you, so we can go there and vandalise the building.
The two recruits cheered and clapped.
Yay! This is a dangerous mission. Police are known to hate funny antics like vandalism. You may be arrested. You may even be killed. But everyone who sees this mission through will receive 200 Frate Points each.
The recruits looked at each other wide-eyed at the mention of 200 Frate Points. Big Fat Frate stepped forward and spoke.
I got a bunch of paint cans in the parking lot, but they're too heavy and there's too many to carry them all at once. I don't know how we'll get them there.
Wonderful Pete looked out at the parking lot and saw the big heap of cans of black paint. He closed his eyes and started tracing his magic wand around in circles in the air. As he did so, a translucent disc of glowing light appeared under the cans. At the tilting and swaying of his wand, the disc lifted up and floated around. Now it would be easy to bring the paint along. Having a wizard's help is very useful. It would have been a very enchanting spectacle had Wonderful Pete not been screeching like a banshee or an angry cat the entire time. He often has to screech loudly for his spells to work. Don't ask me why. I'm not a wizard.
Wonderful,
declared Frabello.
Now everyone, this could be a very long journey. Maybe even more than half an hour. My hopper's outside. I hope you all have your transport ready. I'll be rolling, said
Fatto.
I'll be on my broomstick,
said Wonderful Pete.
I forgot my transport,
said the blue Frate.
Oh, for poop's sake,
said Frabello.
This is an important mission and you forgot your transport? Poop on a stick. I'm fining you 3 Frate Points.
The blue Frate was shocked. His eyes became watery and his lip quivered, but he didn't speak back. He hated to lose Frate Points, but would of course never question an orange Frate's ruling. Big Fat Frate made an interjection, breaking the tension.
Hold on. Didn't I recruit a 3rd Frate? Where's Flongo? I didn't need him, did I?
The blue Frate sniffled and answered him.
Flongo was sleeping in the ball pit, sir. We should check there.
Frabello climbed into the playplace and started wading through the ball pit. He quickly found a dreadful sight. A dead indigo Frate, who while sleeping had gotten a ball lodged in his mouth and choked to death in his sleep.
Those ratbag police,
Frabello muttered to himself.
Those ratbag police have already killed Flongo! They'll pay for this!
The Frates all stood around with their heads bowed respectfully as Frabello summoned his non-corporeal trumpet, a gift from Wonderful Pete, and played taps. Chapter 2. The Journey. Having paid their respects to Flongo, Frabello, Wonderful Pete, Big Fat Frate, and the unnamed Blue Frate had started on their way towards the police station. Though sad, it was somewhat fortunate for the Blue Frate that Flongo had died. It meant he was no longer without transport, as he would be able to use Flongo's romper stompers. And so the Frates travelled along, Frabello bouncing on his hopper, Wonderful Pete floating through the air on his broom, Big Fat Frate rolling forward like a giant water balloon, and the Blue Frate clomping about on his fancy new pair of grave-robbed romper-stompers, with a floating, glowing disc carrying a horde of paint cans following behind them as they went. As the party was moving along the road, it happened that there was a lady walking down the street. It was becoming an increasingly rare sight to see non-Frates in Welton. Ever since the Frates established Welton as Frate territory, non-Frates generally wanted to stay away, fearing the high crime rates. All the people who were living there before had moved out. Sometimes, however, you would still get someone who was not aware of the Frate infestation and would walk through thinking it was just a normal part of Australia. Such unlucky people would often be mugged or assaulted. Fortuitously for this particular uninformed lady, she was very pretty, which the Frates all noticed once they were close enough. So rather than hitting her, they would try to hit on her instead. The Blue Frate was the first to speak up.
Hey, baby! Once you go blue, all your dreams will come true.
The lady stopped and looked at the band of heroes. Her expression was unreadable and vacant. She went back to walking. Big Fat Frate tried next.
Hey, baby! Once you go pink, you'll never rethink.
The lady did the same as the last time, which should be expected since Fatto's approach was not much different from the Blue Frates. Wonderful Pete thought he'd fare better.
Hey, baby! Once you go yellow, you'll want no other fellow.
To all the Frates' surprise, the lady had the same reaction for the third time in a row. They began to wonder if there was anything that could impress her. How had she not swooned yet? Frabello gave the final attempt, undeterred by the others' failures.
Hey, baby! Once you go orange, you'll...
Frabello lost his sentence, not being able to recall any of the words that rhyme with orange at that time, and so out of frustration shouted,
Poop on a stick!
The lady was confused by what she thought was a complete pickup line, and so gave a response. I'll poop on a stick? Frabello, not wanting to look foolish, pretended that was exactly what he meant.
Yeah, you'll poop on a stick.
The other Frates all raucously cheered and laughed at Frabello's brilliant joke as Frabello led the group onwards, accepting all their accolades and not letting his embarrassment show. The lady, I'm told, went on to meet with her friends for brunch. She told them about the colourful men hitting on her, and they all agreed it was strange.
Good one, Frabello! Once you go orange, you'll poop on a stick! Brilliant!
Said Big Fat Frate.
Yep, I'm pretty clever. It all comes with being orange, after all,
said Frabello.
I'm surprised she didn't start kissing you right then and there,
exclaimed Wonderful Pete.
She did, actually. Rather lots of kisses, I think,
said Frabello dishonestly, not making eye contact.
Whoa, she did?
Asked the Blue Frate, having not seen any kissing happening.
I don't remember seeing that. Yes, I'm pretty sure it was after you fell off your romper stompers,
answered Frabello with some quick thinking.
You were laughing so hard you fell over, and I'm pretty sure when you were setting yourself back up was probably when all the kissing and whatnot happened. Oh, yeah, that seems right,
said the Blue Frate. Frates are very easy to trick.
Of course, I remember missing that completely, so I think,
he said, not making eye contact, hoping the other Frates would believe that he wasn't misremembering Frabello's story. He didn't want to seem foolish. Big Fat Frate then joined and explained how he must have rolled right onto his face as it happened, and that's why he didn't see it, but definitely was aware of its occurrence. Wonderful Pete then explained how he was quite sure he was aware of it too, but how he probably missed it because he was probably busy taking the bins out or vacuuming right as it happened. All four Frates were now staring up at the sky, refusing to make eye contact with each other, hoping they all believed each other's lies about being aware of an event that didn't happen. Wanting to change the subject so he wouldn't be found out, Big Fat Frate said, So police are pretty garbage, huh? The other Frates all became at ease and nodded, giving statements of agreement.
They just don't like being funny. I don't know why,
said the Blue Frate.
One time I was being very funny. At least I think it was funny. I was taking people's belongings and throwing them off the bridge into the water. That's funny, right?
Considered Frabello.
What kind of belongings? Things that are funny to throw off bridges and into the water. Like handbags, phones, glasses, walking sticks, dogs, you know.
Explained the Blue Frate.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely funny.
Agreed Frabello, and the other two Frates nodded.
Right? Well, I was throwing it all off the bridge into the water, just being funny, and then this ratbag police tackled me and put me in handcuffs, saying I was doing theft, destruction of property, and public disturbance. Well, yeah, that's the point, bozo. I had to go to court, and I thought if I showed the judge how funny I am, he'd get it and probably send the police to jail and not me. So when they asked me to talk, I did a diss track about how police and judges are stanky flopheads. Well, the judge said that I was contempting the court and would have to go to jail even more now. They just don't get it.
The Blue Frate shook his head in sad disapproval.
So for being so funny, they send you to the most unfunny place of all? It doesn't make sense,
said Frabello.
Police have never been able to catch me because I'm too good. I've heard in jail they really limit your video game time. Goober,
started the Blue Frate gravely.
You don't get any video game time in jail.
The three other Frates all gasped. Frabello even threw up. They had all heard how unfunny jail is, but none of them had imagined it could be so dismal. The thought made Big Fat Frate's eyes watery, but he was able to hold back from crying.
But one cool thing about jail is the tattoos you get there are permanent,
said the Blue Frate. This revelation stunned the other Frates. They had always heard that it was possible to make tattoos permanent, but they didn't know how to achieve it. No matter how many times they would draw on themselves with markers or paint or apply temporary tattoos, they always rubbed off after a few days, or a few weeks if they were careful. The Blue Frate unbuttoned his pyjama shirt and showed off his right shoulder.
Look at this one,
he said.
It's a frog.
The reveal of the Blue Frate's permanent frog tattoo was met with woes from the other Frates.
Why'd you get a frog?
Asked Frabello.
I don't know. Frogs are cool,
said the Blue Frate. The Frates all found this to be an agreeable and reasonable motive.
I don't think I could go to jail, even for a permanent tattoo,
said Frabello.
My girlfriend would miss me too much.
The Frates were shocked.
You have a girlfriend?
Asked a bewildered Big Fat Frate.
Yes, certainly,
said Frabello, suspiciously refusing to make eye contact.
If you might recall that girl who somewhat kissed me earlier, she, I'm pretty sure, said that I was so awesome and funny that she wanted to be some kind of girlfriend for me or something. I'm kind of surprised you don't remember, actually.
The Frates all believed him and started making up lies about how they definitely remembered such a sequence of events and were pretty sure they even congratulated Frabello on getting a pretty new girlfriend. Frabello then recalled how he of course remembers receiving all of their compliments. Once again, the Frates were all now staring up at the sky. Wanting to end the awkward silence and fearing he might be called out on lying, Frabello distracted everyone by taking out his cigar box guitar and making up a song.
Well, I don't believe in anglerfish. I don't believe in anglerfish. I don't believe in anglerfish at all. It's all a big ploy for drama, planned out by Barack Obama. It's a scam for which I refuse to fall.
The other Frates were immediately whisked away in enjoyment of Frabello's new song. Wonderful Pete conjured forth a washtub bass to join in. Big Fat Frate took out his percussion mallets and started drumming on his tummy. He was able to get different drum-like sounds from his tummy by tensing and relaxing it and hitting different spots, one of the benefits of his many birth defects and mutations. The Blue Frate forgot to bring an instrument that day and so was left out. He tried to not draw too much attention to himself. He had already lost 3 Frate points for forgetting to have his own transportation. He didn't want to think about how many he might lose further if the others realized he forgot to bring an instrument on a mission too. Big Fat Frate started the next verse.
Well, I know that oysters are real, and lobsters, sharks, crabs, squids and eels. I know when such cause I've eaten them all. I've had many a seafood dish, and never seen an anglerfish. It's a scam for which I refuse to fall.
Wonderful Pete added a third verse.
Well, I have seen some wondrous things, like finger traps and silly string, the likes of which most folks will never see. But when I heard that it was said, there's fish with light bulbs on their head, I said sorry, that's too far-fetched for me.
When it should have been time for everyone to sing together for a final verse, the Blue Frate interjected,
I've seen an anglerfish.
The music stopped quite abruptly. Frabello put his cigar box guitar away and pulled out his submachine gun, pointing it straight at the Blue Frate's head.
Explain yourself right now, mother flipper,
said Frabello with some of the most intense seriousness anyone had ever heard from his voice.
In Finding Nemo, remember?
said the Blue Frate with the same casualness with which he made his previous statement.
It tried to eat Marlin and Dory.
Frabello considered the Blue Frate's explanation.
Oh yeah,
he said, and he put his submachine gun away.
Guess I won't be singing that song again.
Chapter 3. The Blackening. After only a small final stretch of travelling, the Frates arrived at the police station. Setting aside their various means of transport, they stood in consternation before the unfunny and evil building. Who was to say what horrible punishments were being dealt inside that building, and by what depraved, humorless people? Wonderful Pete set the disc of paint cans down on the ground beside a police car.
All right,
said Frabello.
Big Fat Frate, you write disparaging comments about police. Wonderful Pete, you write disparaging comments about the police's mums. Blue Frate, you write as many swear words as you can. As for me, I'll make a big funny picture. But oh, what to paint?
Frabello tapped the wooden end of his paintbrush against his chin in contemplation.
Paint a frog,
said the Blue Frate.
Frogs are cool. Paint a poop,
said Big Fat Frate.
Poop's always funny. Paint a cigarette,
said Wonderful Pete.
Everyone likes ciggies, except police, probably.
Frabello held up his hand with his eyes closed, signalling for silence. The Frates complied and waited intently for the Orange Frate's decision. He opened his eyes.
I will paint a frog, taking a poop, and the poop is smoking a ciggy, he
stated authoritatively. The Frates clapped and cheered and laughed at their brilliant leader. Frabello nodded and bowed graciously. All four of the Frates took a can of paint each and started on their own section of a wall. The Blue Frate had to finger paint because he had forgotten his paintbrush. Being illiterate, he didn't know how to write any swear words like Frabello had instructed, and so he instead painted swirls and squiggles. If anyone asked, he'd say he was writing swears in Arabic script, which would surely upset the police even more. Finger painting away, his hands became covered in black paint, and he thought to himself,
I can't even see the blueness of my hands anymore. That is, if they are still blue, I have no way to know.
The Frates weren't aware of this, but the police station had surveillance cameras. Only shortly after they had started vandalizing, a couple of police officers had come out to arrest them. One stood with his arms crossed, and the other with his hands on his hips. Both of them had sunglasses and unimpressed looks on their faces.
All right, boys, fun's over. Come inside and we'll have a talk,
said the one with his hands on his hips. The Frates all stopped painting to look at the officers. Frabello, being the leader, was the one to respond.
Talk about what? How gay you are?
The Frates all laughed. The police officers didn't grasp the humour. The hands-on-hips officer spoke again, saying,
No, maybe about you lot being under arrest. Put your hands behind your back.
And then became the pulling-out handcuffs officer. Said Frabello, and then,
Rack off!
He pulled out his submachine gun and sprayed a small round of ammunition. Most of the bullets missed due to Frabello's lack of effort, as he wasn't taking the situation very seriously. But the previously crossed arms officer got one in the shoulder and another one in the hand. The Frates all laughed and turned their attention back to painting, thinking that would be the end of that. Meanwhile, the two officers scrambled to retreat behind the police car, with one of them shouting into their radio,
Shots fired! Officer hit! Send backup!
The Frates' painting was then interrupted by a few more police officers emerging and starting to fire their pistols at them. The Frates ran for cover behind whatever they could find. Frabello and the Blue Frate went behind a tree, Wonderful Pete hid behind a public litter bin, and Big Fat Frate went just around the corner of the police station, and the bullets kept coming.
"Oh, come on! Learn to take a joke, liberals!"
shouted Frabello. Frates don't understand politics and don't know what liberalism is. They've just heard many people say that liberals get very upset over mere jokes, and so that has become the entire meaning to Frates. Frabello started leaning out from behind the tree to occasionally fire back. Big Fat Frate took out his iconic baseball bat and rolled out. With a shout of
"For Flongo!"
he charged towards the officers and started swinging his bat around in a flurry. He got one of them in the head with a loud clonk, and the officer crumpled onto the ground, knocked out.
"I got him! I got him!"
hollered Big Fat Frate. As he continued his rolling rampage, he noticed one of the officers present was a woman.
"Hey, baby!"
he said to her, rolling about as fast as he could to avoid being shot.
"Once you go pink, you'll..." "Nah!"
He didn't get to finish his sentence as the female officer managed to spray his eyes with pepper spray, causing them to become a redder shade than their usual hue.
"What do I do?"
the Blue Frate asked Frabello while sitting on the ground with his back to the tree. While blind firing around the tree so he could look at the Blue Frate while talking to him, Frabello answered,
"Just get whatever weapon you brought along and attack the police with it." "But..."
The Blue Frate dreaded having to give this next explanation. He touched the tips of his index fingers together and admitted,
"I forgot to bring a weapon today. Are you flopping serious?"
asked Frabello with heavy disappointment.
"First you forget your transport. Then you forget to bring a musical instrument and a paintbrush. Don't think I didn't notice. And you didn't bring a weapon either? Minus 28 Frate points. That's 3 for the paintbrush, 10 for the weapon, and 15 for the instrument."
This was too much to lose at once. The Blue Frate wrapped his arms around his legs, tucked his face to his knees, and started sobbing. Frabello saw this pitiful sight and sighed.
"Heavy is the head that wears the crown,"
Frabello said to himself.
"Okay, Blue Frate, since you don't have a weapon, how about you just give the police the middle finger?"
The Blue Frate looked up. His tears stopped as he thought about it. Slowly his frown turned into a smile, and warmth returned to his visage. He looked down at his opened hands covered in black paint, and slowly curled all the fingers in except the middle ones. He looked up at Frabello with an excited and thankful smile, which Frabello returned. Then, with his spirit reinvigorated, the Blue Frate leaned out from behind the tree with both middle fingers waving around like mad.
"How do you like that, coppers?"
called out the Blue Frate.
"Your mum's a lousy dingleberry, and your dad's a dorky buttmunch."
Wonderful Pete rose up from behind his public litter bin shield, swooping about on his flying broomstick. His loud screeching filled the air, adding to the already chaotic sound of gunfire. He wound his arm behind his head, wand in hand, and then violently jerked it out in front of himself, sending a streak of light flashing out of his wand. It dashed towards the police car being used as cover and exploded into a giant ball of fire upon contact, bringing the battle to an end. Once the smoke had dissipated, the police were no longer anywhere to be seen. What's more, since the paint cans were next to the police car, when the explosion happened, the paint had gone everywhere, covering the entire face of the police station.
"My goodness!"
exclaimed Frabello.
"We vandalised the entire wall! Great job, Frates! 200 Frate points for each of you!"
The Frates all cheered and went for a 4-way high 10, or high 40. But when they all faced each other, they saw they had all been covered in the black paint too, from head to toe.
"What the heck?"
said Wonderful Pete.
"I can't see what colour any of you are."
The Frates all examined themselves, hoping to see some patch free of paint. They found none.
"Well, I'm orange,"
said Frabello.
"I know that."
The Blue Frate then felt the common Frate compulsion to lie and trick the other Frates.
"I'm orange too, actually,"
he said. This caused some confusion amongst the Frates. They felt doubtful and suspicious, but they didn't say anything. If he was in fact orange, they wouldn't want to question him or upset him, of course. Frabello didn't have this issue, though. Even if the Blue Frate was orange, so was Frabello, and so they would be of equal standing.
"Wait,"
said Frabello.
"I thought you were blue." "Well, actually,"
said the Blue Frate, now looking in every direction except that of his accuser.
I think this is that kind of paint that gives people allergic reactions that change their skin colour. And it's, like, permanent or something? Oh, yeah, I heard of that, I think,
said Big Fat Frate dishonestly.
I'm orange too now. And me,
said Wonderful Pete.
Wonderful Pete the Orange Wizard. That's the kind of name I should probably be called. I'm the Orange Frate,
said Frabello, unpleased with the possibility of his usurpation.
I know what you mean. As an Orange Frate myself, I can completely relate,
said Big Fat Frate. Frabello responded simply with,
No, I reckon I'm the orangest of all,
said the Blue Frate.
No, you're probably more vermilion,
said Wonderful Pete.
I think wizards are actually more susceptible to turning orange anyway. You're all a bunch of gronks,
asserted Frabello.
Now come on, the mission's done, back to Welton. I'm going to go home to my wife. You have a wife, Frabello?
asked Wonderful Pete.
Of course I have a wife. Don't you remember?
answered Frabello, now quite cross.
I told that girl to poop on a stick. She laughed and started kissing me. She said I was so funny and handsome and good at kissing that she wanted to marry me.
A problem with Frates is that when they lie, they sometimes trick themselves into believing what they're saying, and then become very passionate about defending the lie they now believe. Frabello had by now convinced himself that he was in a relationship with the lady from earlier. Frates inevitably completely forget about the lies they tell after a few days, and then they never get brought up again. But for now, Frabello continued.
I conceded to her pleas, and then Nangflubert, the great wizard himself, descended from a cloud to officiate the wedding. She went home afterwards to start making dinner for me, which should be ready soon, and her friends all started saying how sad they were that she was getting married and not them. So I married them as well, and now my harem is back at home waiting for me, and I don't want you bumflops making me late.
Chapter 4. Frates Take Sides. The atmosphere was uneasy and contentious as the party was heading back. They had entered back into Welton, making a trail of black paint as they went, and were travelling through its familiar streets again, but it brought no sense of comfort. Each Frate kept trying to subtly shift their way to the front of the expedition to assert themselves as the leader. They would be very happy once they reached the front, but as soon as someone else took their place they would become very cross and felt disrespected, resenting whoever went before them. As the constant rearrangement was happening, the Frates heard a commotion of cheering nearby. They rounded the corner to find a game of sport game happening on a sport field, with an audience giving a loud ovation for the display. Sport game is a popular activity among Frates. It is a vaguely sports-like sort of game with Calvin Ball-esque rules. Any Frates who wanted to play had to bring some sort of equipment of their own choosing to play with, and would use it in whatever manner they saw appropriate. The way to win sport game was subjective, and Frates would usually walk away with differing ideas of who had won. In this particular instance, there were Frates zooming around on skateboards trying to avoid being hit by the Frates with hockey sticks chasing after them on foot. Some Frates were playing dodgeball with chess pieces, and other Frates were picking the chess pieces off the ground and stuffing as many in their mouths as they could fit and saying "chubby bunny." Some were sword fighting with pool noodles, and some were rolling bowling balls through other Frates' legs in a croquet-ish fashion. Some were having a staring contest, and one Frate was solely focused on bouncing a basketball on the spot. The referee had been strapped to a kite and was soaring above trying to shoot everyone with a foam dart gun, which proved very difficult with the boxing gloves he was wearing. Under normal circumstances, Frabello would have been happy to join in the game, or maybe just join the fans and cheer on the action, but he was too grumpy about there being new orange Frates trying to take his place to take part in sport game. He walked over to the announcer's table and took the microphone. He walked into the middle of the field and spoke to everyone.
One of you give me a Ciggy.
The game stopped. The players and the audience all stared at Frabello, no one moving at all. Normally the Frates would follow the orders of Frabello T Johnson unquestionably on account of him being orange, but with the black paint they couldn't tell who it was that was interrupting their game, or what colour he was. Frabello was faced with a sea of over 200 mostly indigo to turquoise faces just staring back at him.
Come on, I've had a long day. Someone give me a Ciggy. You, I see you've got a pack in your sleeve.
The frate that Frabello singled out quickly tried to hide the cigarettes in his pocket and shake his head and shrug like he had no idea what this drippy black frate was talking about, although he still had one cigarette hanging out of his mouth. The referee, still up in the air on his kite, shot a foam dart at Frabello, getting his attention. Frabello looked up to the referee. The referee shot 2 more darts at Frabello, then he said,
What's the big idea, bub? Who do you think you are interrupting sport game?
The referee then fired another dart at him.
I'm Frabello T Johnson, the Orange Frate and the President of Welton, and I'm covered in black freaking paint, and I need a freaking Ciggy!
At the realization of who was speaking, all the frates in attendance started frantically patting down their clothes, looking for a cigarette to appease their leader. Several frates who had found one started speed-walking towards Frabello, but before a cigarette had been put in his mouth, a voice called out,
Not so fast!
Bringing everyone to a pause. Big Fat Frate had picked up another microphone and was addressing the frates.
I am Big Fat Frate, and I'm also orange. And I say, instead of giving Frabello a Ciggy, you should be focused on giving me hot dogs, or potato chips, or popcorn, and sody pops.
Big Fat Frate began licking his lips as he scanned over the crowd's various snacks. Doing so got some black paint on his tongue, which he then did his best to spit all back out.
Is it true, Frabello?
Asked the referee.
Is Big Fat Frate orange now?
Frabello hung his head in disappointment.
Yes,
Said Frabello.
he got paint on him that turned him orange. But I'm still president. I'm orange too now,
Said the blue frate, happily romper-stompering onto the field.
and as your new leader, I'm going to make a few changes around here.
The frates all kept looking between the 3 figures covered in black paint, not having any idea of what to do or who to listen to. Then, to make matters more confusing, Wonderful Pete swooped into view and started adding his own input.
Ignore that goober. He's really more vermilion anyway. I, Wonderful Pete, am the most orange of all.
Wonderful Pete flew across to the far corner of the field and called out,
Forget these other plops and follow me as I usher in a new era of Frate history.
The frates all looked at each other, not sure what to do, who to follow.
I'll give everyone who joins my side wonderful enchantments,
Promised Wonderful Pete. This was enough to win over a large portion of the frates, and a crowd started heading off in Wonderful Pete's direction. Fatto rolled to another corner, saying,
Be my Frates! Everyone on my side gets to eat at Big Fat Burgers for free!
Another portion of the frates started going to follow Fatto. Frabello went to another corner and said,
Everyone who comes on my side will get Frate Points!
and another section went to side with him. The blue frate went to the final available corner, saying,
If you join my side, I'll let you borrow my CDs and DVDs that I don't use anymore.
and now there were 4 opposing frate tribes, previously all united under the Weltish banner, now rivals. As the enemy tribes all stared each other down, they all knew a battle was inevitable. The big fat frate took out his percussion mallets and started pounding out a slow, ominous thumping on his tummy, starting up a war song. His frates took out their vuvuzelas, which is the standard instrument for fans to bring to sport game matches, and began blowing some menacing drones. The big fat frate sang out to his adversaries.
I am the big fat orange Frate, that's what they all say. But now you're standing in my way, and so you must be slain. What's wrong with your heads to oppose me? You must be nuts. Such betrayal has me feeling dismayed. Once you all lie dead, we'll put your hands on each other's butts, and everyone will.
Upon hearing this, many Frates shook with fear, as is the intention of a proper Frate war song: demoralization. Wonderful Pete ordered his Frates to ready their vuvuzelas. As he flew over them, he sprinkled magic dust from his wand over them to enchant their vuvuzelas to have a more whimsical sound. He began his war song.
Alakazam and Alakazoo, and for more into many of you, the battles of shall prove this true. Alakazam or two, bada bing and bada boom, fighting with wizards brings only doom. You so shall go the way of the dodo. Rest in peace, you bippity boppity bozos.
Wonderful Pete's Frates were bolstered with renewed confidence. Frabello's army was trembling. Even Frabello felt the pressure. Nevertheless, being the natural-born leader that he is, he maintained a facade of confidence. None of his Frates had their vuvuzelas ready, as they were all too scared, so Frabello took out his cigar box guitar and gave a solo performance.
You're all orange now, but I was orange first. That's why I'm the best, and you are all the worst. The Spanish couldn't stop me, and neither could the teachers. The police couldn't stop me, and neither could the preachers. Yeah, you are all ugly, dumb and stinky. All your clothes combined have less funny than my pinky. If I were you, Lord, I'd turn around and run, 'cause I'm the only orange Frate with a gun.
Frabello's song moved everyone. His Frates had regained their confidence and started happily blowing their vuvuzelas. One of Big Fat Frate's Frates even tried sneaking over to Frabello's side after such a display, but Big Fat Frate caught him and made him stay with him. The Blue Frate's war song was less of a song and more just him shouting,
Why is no one on my side?
in exasperation. The Frates all put away their instruments to take out their weapons instead. Guns were being loaded or cocked. Arrows and bolts were being drawn. Melee weapons were having practice swings and stabs. Brass knuckles were being slid on. The Blue Frate was the only Frate on the entire field who didn't have a weapon. He put his hand in his pocket with his middle finger extended, ready to pull it out and wave it at everyone once the battle commenced. Before everyone had a chance to rush into the middle to start fighting, they were all caught off guard by a screech. Wonderful Pete was rising up in the air on his broomstick, screeching to the sky with his hands stretched upward. Black clouds started rolling in. Lightning cracked, torrential rain began bucketing down, howling gales blew in every direction. None of this provided any tactical advantage to Wonderful Pete. He just felt as though dramatic weather would be appropriate for such an occasion. The leaders of the 4 Frate tribes each shouted,
Charge!
And everyone began running into battle. As they were all running towards each other, the rain from Wonderful Pete's conjured storm enveloped them. As it did so, the black paint on the 4 leaders rinsed off. All the battle cries died down to silence. Their raised weapons were all lowered to be held dangling at their sides. The mad dash to the center slowed, and everyone stood still. Everyone could see that only one of the leaders was orange, Frabello. Big Fat Frate was still pink, Wonderful Pete was still yellow, and the Blue Frate was still blue. The storm rolled away, and the weather was calm again.
Ah,
Said Big Fat Frate.
I guess I'm not orange. All right, Frabello wins then.
Said Wonderful Pete.
Hooray for Frabello!
Said the Blue Frate.
Long live Frabello T Johnson!
All the Frates chanted,
Long live Frabello! Long live Frabello T Johnson!
But Frabello wasn't impressed.
Not so fast, you bunch of flops,
said Frabello. His arms were crossed and he had a big angry frown.
A lot of you did not show proper respect to my orangeness. Where's the poo stain who wouldn't give me a ciggy? You! For disobeying a superior frate's orders, you're getting fined 50 frate points. Everyone who didn't join my side is getting fined 1,000 frate points for siding with inferior frates over an orange frate. And as for you three scrubs who are leading all this nonsense, for pretending to be orange, you're getting fined 100 million frate points each!
Every frate present except Frabello fell down and began wailing. It was such an enormous loss of frate points they could barely comprehend it. Even for the frates who had sided with Frabello and weren't losing any, seeing that many frate points being taken away at once crushed their spirit. Everyone was weeping, but they all knew it was deserved. Not obeying the orders of a superior frate, and not just any superior frate, an orange frate? Choosing to side with a yellow frate or a pink frate or even a blue frate instead of an orange one? Passing yourself off as a superior frate? Usurping the position of one? Such things would be reprehensible to any frate. They didn't mean for it to happen. They were just having fun lying and accidentally tricked themselves. They couldn't tell who was orange and who wasn't. But the punishment had to stand. Such actions go against frate's nature and are disgraceful no matter what the reason is. Frabello stood there with his arms crossed, showing no pity, waiting for everyone to finish crying. To fulfill his promise, he doled out a reward to the frates who stood by him.
Everyone who sided with me gets 7 frate points. I appreciate your display of loyalty.
It took a while, but eventually the frates ran out of tears. For a while longer they all kept lying down, feeling despondent. But after enough waiting, they finally started slowly standing up again.
So, what do we do now?
A green frate asked. Frabello considered what the best course of action would be.
I'm hungry. Let's go get Big Fat Burgers.
All the frates went back to Big Fat Frate's house for dinner. They had fun being silly geese and forgot about everything that happened. Funny jokes were being told, games and music were being played, and the play place equipment was being explored. Big Fat Frate and some of his employees got to work serving everyone food and charging their usual prices of Frate points. And just as well too. He had a lot of Frate points to earn back.
Well, I don't believe in Anglerfish. I don't believe in Anglerfish. I don't believe in Anglerfish at all. It's all a big ploy for drama, put out by Barack Obama. It's a scam for which I refuse to fall. Well, I know that oysters are real, and lobsters, sharks, crabs, squids and eels. I know as such 'cause I've eaten them all. I've had many a seafood dish and never seen an anglerfish. It's a scam for which I refuse to fall. Well, I have seen some wondrous things, like finger traps on silly string, the likes of which most folks will never see. But when I heard that it was said there's fish with light bulbs on their head, I said sorry, that's too far-fetched for me. So I don't believe in anglerfish. I don't believe in anglerfish. It's a scam for which I refuse to fall. I don't believe in anglerfish. I don't believe in anglerfish. I don't believe in anglerfish at all. I'm the big fat orange frate, that's what they all say. But now you're standing in my way, and so you must be slain. What's wrong with your heads to oppose me? You must be nuts. Such betrayal has me feeling dismayed. Once you all lie dead, we'll put your hands on each other's butts, and everyone will think you died being gay. Alakazam and Alakazoo, I'm far more orange than any of you. A bottle of shall prove this true. Alakazam or two. Bada bing and bada boom. Fighting with lizards brings only doom. You such a roll the way of the dodo. Rest in peace, you bippity boppity buzzers. You're all orange now, but I was orange first. That's why I'm the best, and you are all the worst. The Spanish couldn't stop me, and neither could the teachers. The police couldn't stop me, and neither could the preachers. Yeah, you are all ugly, dumb and stinky. All you grows combined have less funny than my pinky. If I were you, Lord, I'd turn around and run. 'Cause I'm the only orange frate with a gun.